Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes, and here are the three big stories for today. This is the extended cut because with each of these three stories, I'm going to be giving kind of a story behind the story to add some context. So the first is this: NATO reportedly wants to coordinate arms supplies to Ukraine instead of the United States. Now, I think that's probably a good thing for Ukraine, and it's very sad for the United States that they're relinquishing that leadership role, or they may be relinquishing that leadership role, but they need to do that until they can get their act together. It was the United States that created the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, the Ramstein format. However, according to the newspaper, an alternative mechanism is being sought, in part because of concerns about Donald Trump's re-election as U.S. president. Such a move would be explosive, as since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, NATO has emphasized that military assistance is a decision of individual member states, not a program of the alliance. So this would change the dynamics pretty radically. Now, what's actually going on? Well, I played this morning. This was Trump says that he would encourage Russia to attack NATO allies. I said I would not protect our NATO allies. In fact, I would encourage Russia to do whatever the blank they want. Okay, so I actually had a conversation about that this morning. Well, the person on the other side, also a Republican, was saying, well, he wasn't really just saying let Russia do whatever he wants. He was saying, NATO, you have to step up and do your fair share. I get that. I do understand that. But the way he's doing this, absolutely not right. Listen to it again if you missed it this morning.
Of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay.
Wow. Now, look at the crowd here. That's really important. There are a few people cheering here, and then there are some people that are like, I'm not so sure about this. That's not what I signed up for. And what we have to come to terms with, and I posed this question to this friend of mine, at what point do you just say, you know what, Trump's not actually articulating our values anymore? So the idea is that you have a candidate that embodies your values, not that you're following a candidate because of the personality of the candidate. And I think we're getting lost with that in the Republican Party. Here's another. This is a Trump's Truth Social. From this point forward, are you listening, U.S. Senate? No money in the form of foreign aid should be given to any country unless it is done as a loan, not just a giveaway. It can be loaned on extraordinarily good terms, like no interest and unlimited life, but a loan nevertheless. The deal should be contingent that the U.S. is helping you as a nation, but if the country we are helping ever turns against us or strikes it rich sometime in the future, the loan will be paid off and the money will be returned to the United States. We should never give money anymore without the hope of payback or without strings attached. The United States of America should be stupid no longer. Well, this is stupid. It's kind of like this. If I invite you over for dinner and I say, okay, come on over, let's have a good meal together. And then at the end of the meal, I hand you a bill and say, well, this meal was $14.95, so pay up. That's changed the way that we interact with each other. But if I didn't hand you the bill, would there be a reciprocal arrangement later on? Would you invite me over later? I mean, this is how friends treat each other, right? Okay, nations do the same thing too, and he's completely undermining the reciprocal relationship. The goodwill that we have created in Ukraine is being squandered by this kind of pig-headed foolishness. It's just silly. I wonder what Ronald Reagan would have thought about this. If we're saying, no, you have to pay this bill up front. No. Stand up to the evil empire. Remember, it was Reagan that talked about the evil empire speech. It was delivered by President Reagan to the National Association of Evangelicals on March 8, 1983, at the height of the Cold War and Soviet-Afghan War. In that speech, Reagan referred to the Soviet Union as an evil empire and as the focus of evil in the modern world. Now, that speech was given in the context of the nuclear arms race, and I want you to hear a little bit of what he had to say in it. I just highlighted a couple of paragraphs right around that evil empire. So I urge you to speak out against those who would place the United States in a position of military and moral inferiority. I urge you to beware the temptation of pride, the temptation of blithely declaring yourselves above it all and label both sides equally at fault, to ignore the facts of history and the aggressive impulses of an evil empire, to simply call the arms race a giant misunderstanding and thereby remove yourself from the struggle between right and wrong, good and evil. We're in that same kind of place again at this moment in history. Okay, story number 2. Fake Zaluzhnyi websites appear online. Well, what's happening is the Center for Countering Disinformation's warned of fake websites supposedly linked to Valery Zaluzhnyi. The center stresses that these sites are not associated with Zaluzhnyi and that the Ukrainian law enforcement agencies have already been informed about their activities. They're collecting personal data and other things. Now, I got to thinking about this and I thought, you know, if they're doing this, what else were they doing? How much discord were the Russians sowing in order to create the tension between Zaluzhnyi and Zelensky? Now, I don't think that that's all that was going on, but they really wanted to see a breakup of the band. This was an article from November. Zelensky rebuke of top general signals rift in Ukrainian leadership. And how much did the Russians amplify it? I would think they did quite a bit. I can't prove that, but I think they amplified it quite a bit because they had a vested interest in trying to make them make things as wavy as possible, as difficult as unpleasant as possible. Okay, let's look at this. This is some fun. Now, when people start to believe the misinformation, it gets spread through repeaters like RFK Jr. and Stella Moscow. I don't know who she is, or if it's even a she to begin with her picture on here. The war that should never have happened is the caption. And this could just as well be a bot as anything else. But let's hear what RFK Jr. has to say here.
This is a war that should have never happened.
I agree with that. It should never have happened, but not for the reasons that he's talking about.
It's a war the Russians tried repeatedly to settle on terms that were very, very beneficial to Ukraine.
Not true at all. And on terms that were very beneficial to Russia, certainly, but not to Ukraine.
The major thing they wanted was for us to keep NATO out of the Ukraine.
But NATO couldn't have gone into the Ukraine because there was already a war from 2014 forward, and no country can join NATO while there's a civil war within their territory. So that's a bold-faced lie.
The big military contractors want to add new countries to NATO all the time. Why? Because then that country has to conform its military purchases to NATO weapon specifications,
So that's really what's driving the war? Big military contractors are what's behind the war? Come on, RFK. That is not true at all.
Which means certain companies, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, General Dynamics, Boeing, and Lockheed, get a trapped market. In March of 2022, we committed $113 billion. Just to give you an example, we could have built a home for almost every homeless person in this country. We then committed...
Now, I don't know what the math is, but yes, you could have used that $113 billion on other things. But the reason that I have keys, and I use the keys to my car, to my house, and other things, is to prevent bad people from doing bad things. And that's what we're doing here in this context as well. And he seems to forget that. When Russia has chosen to do this bad thing, the rest of the world has to respond.
Another $24 billion since that 2 months ago.
Well, not exactly.
And now President Biden's asking for another $60 billion. But the big expenses are going to come after the war, when we have to rebuild all the things that we destroyed.
Well, it depends on how the war ends. If the war ends in a truce, then you're going to see, or some kind of agreement where Russia gets to keep something and Ukraine gets to have peace, then that's probably true. Then the West will have to step up. If Russia is defeated, then Russia is sitting on a gas station and they can pay for those reparations.
Mitch McConnell was asked, can we really afford to spend $113 billion to Ukraine? He said, don't worry. It's not really going to Ukraine.
It's going to American defense manufacturers.
So he just admitted it's a money laundering scheme.
But that's not what he means. He means that the money is staying here in the United States. It's not a money laundering scheme. But someone like Stella Moscow is going to spread that because someone like RFK Jr. is spreading that. And again, it comes back to the same kind of thing. disinformation campaign that's being actively plied now. And, you have to put first principles first. Why should we be supporting Ukraine? Well, I think this is why. This is a post that I just saw on Twitter. Guilt on Bill Clinton's face. Ukraine relied on the United States to help them if Russia broke its agreement. Ukraine gave out nukes, its only real security, in exchange for a promise. It risked its life for reduced proliferation. For us, for the world. How dare we run now? Hear Bill Clinton and how he's processing this after he was behind brokering the agreement that it was the Budapest Memorandum.
Ukraine?
Well, I knew that President Putin did not support the agreement President Yeltsin made never to interfere with Ukraine's territorial boundaries.
Now, and Putin wouldn't have been president at the time, I don't think. I think Putin came in slightly after Yeltsin made the agreement while he was still president.
An agreement he made because he wanted Ukraine to give up their nuclear weapons. They were afraid to give them up because they thought that's the only thing that protected them from an expansionist Russia. So he gave them up.
And it turns out that would have been the only thing to protect them against an expansionist Russia. And the big lesson here to every nation in the world that's worried about maybe a larger country that has nukes is get nukes yourself so that you can protect yourself just in case. It's a horrible lesson to be sending.
Yeltsin's word was good. He kept his word, but he couldn't pass it through the Duma. So when it became convenient to him, President Putin broke it and first took Crimea. And I feel terrible about it because Ukraine is a very important country, and I feel a personal stake because I got them to agree to give up their nuclear weapons, and none of them believe that Russia would have pulled this stunt if Ukraine still had their weapons.
And of course, they wouldn't have. Okay. That's all that I have. Thank you for listening to me this extended period of time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and the coffees. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.